Hello guys, today I'll be talking about some of my favorite nu metal albums. Now, for those who don't know, nu metal was popular around the mid 90s to maybe mid 2000s, and it divided metalheads at the time. Now, nu metal was the subgenre that got me into rock and metal. Some might laugh at that, but what some metalheads seem to forget is that nu metal was a great gateway genre because it was a mixture of styles. You could hear some reggae, you could hear some rap, you can also hear some industrial, and of course more. But yeah, nu metal, I think it's a bit overhated. Now, people do have their tastes and stuff like that, but I think it deserves more praise. But yeah, nu metal, I think it's a great genre, and again, a great gateway genre too. But yeah, if you're trying to get someone into metal, you could probably get some luck with some of the bands in here when you're suggesting bands to them. At least in my opinion, but of course it does depend on the band that you choose in this genre though, because there are some bad bands in this genre for sure. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this list. And this is in no particular order, by the way, but first one I want to talk about is Sevendust's debut album. With this album, it's just raw, heavy, and I absolutely love it. I think it's one of their best albums. It's my second favorite Sevendust album. Has its share of underrated songs, in my opinion, like Born to Die, which is maybe one of their heaviest songs, and yeah, Prayer, Wired, Too Close to Hate, and many other great songs. I think it's a nu metal classic, even if it is, I guess, I don't know if I'd say overlooked, but I think I'd say maybe underrated. But yeah, Sevendust's debut album, absolutely awesome. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next album, Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park. I mean, you can't talk about nu metal debuts without mentioning this album. I mean, it had a big impact at its time, and it still holds up for many people, including me. I was really into it when I was younger, and I still enjoy it to this day. I am one of the fans that does like Meteora more, but either way, it doesn't matter. I still think this album is excellent and definitely a classic in the genre. But of course, you have many nu metal classics like Crawling in the End, Paper Cut, One Step Closer, and many others. But even the lesser known songs on the album are really good, like Forgotten and Runaway and With You. But yeah, definitely a great album, and definitely a classic. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the next album, $3 Bill Y'all by Limp Bizkit. Definitely a band that gets a lot of hate, maybe one of the most hated bands of all time. I personally dig them. I mean, they're not for everybody, especially with Fred Durst in the band. Significant Other is my favorite album by these guys, but $3 Bill Y'all is still a pretty good album in my opinion. It's raw, and you just get that raw anger and emotion throughout the album. They're not trying to be super polished or anything like that with this album. It's just, again, really raw with the emotion. But some of my favorites on the album are Counterfeit, Stuck, Nobody Loves Me, Sour, Clunk, Faith, and many others. There's a lot of great songs on this album in my opinion. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the next album, Korn's self-titled debut. Out of all the albums here, this is probably the most important one. I mean, it was a game changer at its time, and it still holds up for me today. Yeah, it's definitely a dark album for sure, especially with the album closer, but some of my favorites on the album are Fake, Helmet in the Bush, Blind, Chutes and Ladders, Ball Tongue, Clown. There's a lot of great songs on the album. It's hard to narrow it down to top 3 songs or top 5. There's just a lot of excellent songs on this album, in my opinion. But it also has some underrated songs too, like Fake and Helmet in the Bush. But yeah, definitely a classic and definitely a great album. But next we're going to go ahead and move on to the next album, Adrenaline by Deftones. Not their best album, but I do really dig it though. Some of my favorites are Engine Number 9, 7 Words, Root, Bored, Minus Blindfold, and many others. There's a lot of great songs on this album. It's just really raw. If I remember correctly, it was produced by Terry Date. I heard he's going to work with Deftones with this new album, which I'm definitely stoked about, if it's true, but I'm pretty sure it is though. But Adrenaline, definitely a great album, and of course if you haven't heard it, definitely check it out. But next we have Slipknot's debut album. I really enjoyed it when I heard it for the first time when I was a lot younger, and I just remember just being so blown away and just having the dumbest smile on my face and just really liking Corey Taylor's voice, because Slipknot is definitely a unique band in the genre. I mean, some might compare them or vice versa with like Mushroomhead or maybe Mudvayne, but in my opinion, Mushroomhead and Mudvayne aren't really that great. But with Mudvayne, I do think their album LD50 is really good though. It's not one of my personal favorite nu metal albums, but it is good though. But when it came to stuff after that album, I just wasn't really into it. It got a little bit too, I guess, melodic or soft for me personally, and I just wasn't into Chad Gray's nasally singing. But again, it's not like god awful or by any means, but LD50 is great. But anyways, back to Slipknot. This debut album, absolutely love it today still, and some of my favorites are Sick, Eyeless, Wait and Bleed, Surfacing, Spit It Out, Deluded, No Life. There's a lot of great songs on the album, but even the lesser known songs are really good too, like No Life and Deluded and Tattered and Torn and many others. But yeah, definitely a great album. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to The Sickness by Disturbed. I mean, I think all of us can probably agree that the first half is definitely stronger than the second half, but either way, I do still like the second half though. You do have some great songs like Numb, and I do kind of like Dropping Plates, even though that song does sound a bit dated in my opinion. I still do kind of like it though. It's kind of catchy, even if it does again sound a bit dated. But the more known songs are still pretty good, like Stupefy. Stupefy is probably my favorite of the singles on the album. I'm still thinking about that, but as of now, that's probably my favorite. But I also really like Violence Fetish and Fear. Those are also really good songs. Then you have The Game too. But yeah, there's a lot of great songs on the album, and it's one of my favorite Disturbed albums. But next we have Wisconsin Death Trip by Static X. I love this album. I think it's an underrated debut or underrated nu metal debut album, at least when it's compared to other albums that are commonly mentioned. But yeah, I absolutely dig this album. It's definitely unique with the whole industrial, the vibes you get, and electronics and all that. But of course, everyone knows Push It and I'm with Stupid. But even the lesser known songs are really good too, like Stem and Sweat of the Bud, and The Trance is the Motion. A lot of great songs on the album. I personally think it deserves more attention from fans or nu metal fans. But yeah, definitely a great album for sure. Now, I do think it's maybe their best album. Yeah, it probably is, but there's a lot of other great albums from them too. I absolutely love Machine, Start a War, and Shadow Zone, and their other albums are great too. But yeah, Wisconsin Death Trip, definitely a great album, definitely a classic in the nu metal genre in my opinion. So next we have System of a Down's debut album. I mean, I know some people make the argument that these guys are not nu metal. I remember hearing a few times that they think they're progressive metal, which I definitely disagree. I mean, you can maybe hear it with certain sections of certain songs, maybe, but I don't think they're progressive metal. I'd probably lump them with either nu metal or alternative metal, somewhere in that range. But yeah, either way, this album's great. It's raw, different, and it can get pretty heavy too, so with songs like Pluck and Mind. But yeah, I absolutely dig this album. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to my last pick here, and it is Godsmack's debut album. Now, out of all the ones in my list here, this one would probably be more towards like 8th or 9th place, maybe 10th place. It'd be more towards the back, but either way, it's still one of my favorites. It's still a great album. Some of my favorites on the album are Time Bomb, Whatever, Bad Religion, Voodoo, and some others. Yeah, I think it's a great album. Not my favorite Godsmack album, but I do still think it's one of their best. But anyways, those are my picks. Let me know if you can think of any other strong debut albums from the nu metal genre. Let me know some of your favorite or least favorite songs from certain bands and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like, subscribe, have a nice day, and take care.